Okay, so we are switching now to video, and we're in our living room here, really hoping that our toddler stays asleep as we're talking about this. He's right behind this wall. So we do have a stack of books here that we mentioned earlier in the podcast, and we're hoping this video will work. So you have a few books here to start with.
Yes.
What do you have?
So this, out of all these books about war, is the least scary
Okay.
book about war there is that I've found for little ones. Rabbit and Squirrel, A Tale of War and Peas. And,
As in edible peas.
yes,
Imagine
this is,
horror peas.
exactly. This is Squirrel waking up to find that all of his beautiful tomatoes have been plucked away. This means war. And although the two animals do not solve their conflict by the end of the story,
It's not solved.
it is not. You are left with the possibility, and yeah, it's a nice little tale.
All right, Rabbit and Squirrel starting us off easy here. Okay.
Yes. The next three books here are books specifically related to the war in Iraq. This is a war our son has a lot of questions about because both of his birth parents were born in Baghdad, and he's curious about what it's like in Iraq right now. And to tell him the truth, we've shared some of these stories with him. The experience of different Iraqi people living through war. This is The Librarian of Basra, a true story from Iraq about how several thousand books, I think, were rescued from a library in Basra. 30,000 books the librarian saved while everything was being destroyed in the war.
So that ties into what you were saying earlier about like trying to convey the destruction or the destructive force of war,
Yeah.
communicating it through books.
Yeah.
One example of.
Yeah. This is another one, Silent Music, a story of Baghdad about a boy who loves to write calligraphy, and how easy it is to write words like war, and how his pen struggles when he writes the word peace. Yeah. And it's his own story of the Iraq War. Yeah.
Love the art in this one.
Yeah.
Any points you want to read?
No, I'll leave that one. And this is one of our son's favorites, The Lost and Found Cat, about a family who had to flee as refugees from the city of Mosul, and how along the way the cat that they had taken with them gets separated from them, and how they find each other again.
Kunkush.
This is a story he, in some ways, acts out over and over again. Yeah.
Okay, so we have three here specifically about Iraq, and then the Rabbit and Squirrel, Tale of War and Peas to get us started there. Should we move to the next?
The next three books are a set of books about stopping war.
Stopping war.
Yeah. Things that people have done to bring an end to fighting. This is a story about a prince who is, it's called The War. He is actually not that interested in all this fighting that has been going on for as long as he can remember between his father and another local king, and how he devises a very clever way to bring this long, long, long war to an end. A second book about stopping a war is actually called Grandpa Stops a War. It is about a famous singer who traveled to Spain specifically because of his concerns and his desire to bring peace during the Spanish Civil War. He talks about being in Madrid and singing through the night as bombs were falling, and people feeling a lot more peaceful as he sang. And this led to his decision to go right directly to the front lines where fighting was going on and sing right there. And how he faced very dangerous situations, but while he was singing, the fighting would stop.
True story, right?
True story. Yeah. And
this one's craziness.
a great one for a 4-year-old. Mannequin Peace. A simple story of a boy who peed on a war. This is about a famous statue, which you may have seen in Brussels, Belgium, and about how this little boy stopped a war by peeing on it. Awesome.
I'll take those. All right, there's quite a lineup so far.
The last of our favorite books is this book from the Children of the World series. It's called Global Conflict. This is an informational book.
Rather than story.
Yeah, it's not a story. So it asks and answers a series of questions. Why do conflicts happen? What is war? What happens? Here's a whole list. And it's not even just about war in the end, but it's about ending conflict and avoiding conflict and understanding others so that conflict doesn't grow into war. It's very factual, and it talks about some of the difficulties of war, while also helping kids, I think, readers feel safe while they read it.
Now this book, I don't know if you're going to mention it, but it's part of a series.
Yes.
Will you be talking about that a little bit?
I think there are 4 books in this series at this point.
We've read one other.
One other one I think was about food and famine and hunger. Yeah. So I have 2 books here that were not our favorites because they were a little bit too scary. I read them on my own and did not share them with our son.
So I think that kind of gets to the theme we were talking about earlier in the podcast about being age appropriate. So whether it's a 4-year-old, 10-year-old, 15-year-old, you can approach it differently.
Yeah. This is a picture book, Why War is Never a Good Idea, which sounded great by the title. But it's very intense. It shows a mother and a baby. The previous page, the mother's nursing the baby, and all this time they're never expecting that war is about to hit.
And then the next page.
Yeah, destruction. And it goes like that throughout the book. You know, somebody's having this beautiful day out in the jungle, and suddenly a bomb drops. And that was the same reason that this book was a little bit too scary as well, the day war came. The pictures in here are really lovely, and I think it would be great for older kids. But yeah, this
older
is the
than
case.
4.
Yeah, older than 4. I mean, a girl's in the middle of her school day. And then just after lunch, war comes. And so...
Could be unsettling for a younger kid.
Yeah, yeah. War could come at any time. Yeah, that can be scary. So
those two...
Those 2 were a little bit too scary for us.
Okay, what do we have next?
And these 2 were a little bit too complex for us.
So again, for older...
My son is just about... Well, he's just starting to enjoy having chapter books read to him. This one is called How the Children Stopped the Wars. We hate war.
And one point of clarification, when Charissa says her son, It is our son.
Our son.
Just
Yes.
just if you're wondering.
Yes. There was a lot of metaphor in this book that was a little bit over his head.
What age? What's the title here, and what age would you?
How the Children Stopped the Wars.
10 years old? 10? 15?
9.
9? Okay.
9 or 10, yeah. And this one I thought was a really nice story. It's called My Grandfather's War. It was a discussion of the war in Vietnam and some of the complications
I've not read.
of being a veteran of this war,
Okay.
and how
I haven't read this one.
this little girl wants to talk to her grandpa about what it was like for him to be in war, but he never talks about it. And so she does ask him about some of the reasons. And I think the complexity of this war were a little bit too much for our son to understand.
Okay.
But an older kid, yeah, would probably be just fine with it. And although I don't have copies of all the peace books that we read, we do have our own copy of Salam Alaikum.
So we mentioned that one earlier in
Yes, in the podcast.
the podcast. The Spread Peace on Earth.
Yeah. You could see this is the little boy who started spreading the peace, and he has passed it all along to this group of people, and it keeps growing and growing and growing. It's quite fantastic till it covers the whole world.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
love it.
So in this conversation, we've talked about a lot of different books. We've talked about a lot of different resources, things that you've used with our toddler in your classroom, with teens in the past. And so we started this conversation with talking about the Living Values series, and thought we could wrap up by showing them as well. So the main one you use.
Yes, the Living Values curriculum for ages 3 through 7.
3 to 7. And then there is the next one, ages 8 to 14. And these are big books. I mean, this is over 300 pages in this one. Probably the same here for young adults.
I know they're splitting this up now they're making it into a 2-year curriculum.
What is
now.
it here?
This is the 1-year
Okay.
curriculum.
So they're doubling.
They keep expanding it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so these are old books. I mean,
Yeah.
we've had these a long time. So imagine, new editions look different than these. Okay. So do they all have the same values? It's been a while since
They're
I've
not
looked.
all in exactly the same order,
Okay.
but peace, respect, love,
They all start with peace.
responsibility, happiness, cooperation, honesty, humility, tolerance, simplicity.
This one has
And
freedom.
some of the
Did you-
older kids, they add freedom and unity. Well, unity is in here.
Is here. Okay.
Yeah, there's
So,
extra ones for the older kids.
a little more. Nice. So
And they're adding, I don't know if it's a separate book or another unit they're adding on specifically related to caring for the earth.
oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So an environmental, ecological
Yeah.
piece to it. Okay. Nice. Nice. So I hope this video worked. By the time you're watching this, you'll know if this came through. I know it is low budget production. Our home camera and our personal family camera and my cell phone. So hopefully this works out. And again, the show notes, we'll have these, adventspeace.org/podcast. Look for this conversation. And thanks so much for doing this with me. And I hope this has been meaningful to parents and educators. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.